Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Well, this is great that we're all here, that you're here, I'm here, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself and the gallery and the project that I got into in Bellows Falls. About 5 years ago, started a gallery with some friends, and we, it's been 5 years. 40 shows representing 22 artists, Canal Street Art Gallery in downtown historic Bellows Falls. Really exciting, awesome place. Local artists, and just working to infuse and build a creative economy in southern Vermont and our neighbor New Hampshire over the river together, collectively. It's not a collective gallery, but we all work together. My name is Emmett Dunbar. My photography project and alias is Spaulding Dunbar Images. And today you're going to see a show, Spaulding Dunbar Photo Poet, and it's my first ever solo show. And after the last 4 to 5 years of working with the gallery, I've printed and framed and made shareable or sellable photographs, images that I've collected. I've taken with my 35mm camera. A lot of it is from India because my family is Indian, my wife is Indian, my daughter's Indian. It's been to India a lot, mostly in northeast India and Bengal and Kolkata, but other parts of India too. And I grew up in Rhode Island on the water, on Aquinic Island, and had a whole life of sailing before farming in Vermont. I've been farming for the last 25 years in Vermont. And so it's a combination of these images of peoples and places and stories of India and landscapes and stories of coastal New England and rural Vermont, agricultural Vermont. Particularly the things that I find in the environment, in the natural environment and the built environment that strike me as interesting and beautiful, while at the same time perhaps educational and opportunity to share, that we are all in a flow together and we're all in this place and this whole life and this whole way of all that this is and the way it is. I don't know. I mean, now I'm being sort of poetic. But yeah, so I'm going to stop for a minute. And so, you know, I've mentioned that I've taken photography and it's a photography show, but I don't consider myself a photographer. And the reason why it's Spaulding Dunbar Photo Poet is because I've always been a poet and I've always done creative writing and I've always loved and believed that I could express myself best through poetry. I had a hard time growing up with certain learning disabilities with grammar and reading and writing, and academics were a challenge. I overcame it and ended up doing pretty well and made it all the way through college and all that stuff. But but I always found peace in writing poetry as opposed to stress in writing papers, so to speak. And along with that, I was really fortunate that I had two godfathers, and both of them, one of them was a professional photographer, and the other one loved film and had a business in creating some of the first closed circuit television cameras, and had a garage full of endless amounts of closed circuit television equipment, because he would go and set up, he was a one-man show, and he'd set up cameras in gas stations and bookstores and retail places or whoever wanted them, and he would take care of them and he'd update them, but he'd never get rid of anything that he would take out of one shop and to the next. So I always saw that, and I liked film, but I didn't do much film. My other godfather, who was a photographer, he was a professional photographer. He lived in New York City, and when I was 10, we went to Chinatown, and he bought me a Nikon camera, and I had it all the way through till after college sometime, and went in India one time, actually got caught in a monsoon, and that was the end of that camera. And I had all these images, and when I got involved with the gallery, I dug into them, and I started pulling them out and trying to make them available for other people to see. And that's where the art and the challenge came in, to taking an image that's in a negative or on the computer, which in my case, pretty much when I got into this, it was mostly with digital or in the, I didn't go so far back in to get into my negatives. I haven't really done that as much. So it was really hard to pull them all out and to find them and to see what would work and how it would work. And I didn't have a printer or anything like that. So the first show we did here, I think I went to Staples and printed them off, and went to Michael's and got some cheap frames and put them up, and it looked like a student project, and they weren't much of anything, and they weren't that impressive. And so today what you'll see is an evolution of that. And the photo poet piece is just that, not being a trained photographer, I really feel like I'm trying to share a story. A photo or an image is 1,000 words, or whatever that cliche quote is. But also, they really can tell a story. And so I feel like they sort of tell stories. And the photos that I have from India, I'm trying to help bridge the gap, like bring people to India and bring India to North America. It's a long way away, and it's a neat place, so it's fun to share what's there. And then I have my own interests, like motorcycles, flowers, boats, water, and so there's a lot of flowers and boats and water. Right on. So I do have some of the poems that I've written that go with, they were inspired by the photographs, and also came from within me. So while thinking about the poems and thinking about the photographs at the same time, writing the poems, but the photographs were taken well before the poems were written. And sometimes I definitely looked at the photographs and then ended up having a poem that was kind of more just what came out. But that's poetry. That's why I love being a photo poet. So one of them is, I like doing haikus. Haikus are fun. And one is called Pilgrims, and it's a photograph of pilgrims who are actually students that have traveled all the way across India to the southernmost tip of the subcontinent. At the very bottom of India, there's an island rock off of the tip, and there's a temple there honoring Swami Vivekananda. Not a specific Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim or Christian, because he was one of the first people to really talk about how there were parallels in the different religions. And so it leans and has a lot of base in the Bhagavad Gita and in Hinduism, but it's not specific. However, these pilgrims were Hindu pilgrims, and there were students that had come and were there, much like when you go to the museums in New York or Washington or something, and there's teams of school groups there. It was the same sort of thing, but a bit different. And so that is nimble marigold, as gentle as a bird's song, meditate within. And that's pilgrims, and that's one of those. And the other one, which is not a haiku, but was also inspired by the meditation and contemplation that has existed in a culture like India's for so long, for thousands of years. And I was inspired by an image of a pink lily in the water, and that is connected cycles of center, globe of ways, four directions, your direction, woven strung, tied as one. Impermanence begun, a body not still is alive. So those are two poems, and I have some others. I have some that are very specific. I love Royal Enfields, traveling in India, being a motorcyclist. I've had a couple of BMWs, and Yamaha, and a Suzuki, and whatever, all older. Right now I don't have any. I've always wanted a Royal Enfield. That's an interesting story, you should look it up itself, but originally British, manufactured there, and then it closed, and then someone in India bought the factory, they moved the whole factory to India. Now they're doing it again. There's brand new ones made just for export you can buy in the United States anyway. So that's another haiku, which is from the Royal series. I have some different images from different cities in India. So Royal Jaipur, for example. So royal jelly, yum. Iron horse, fit for a queen. Royal Enfield, So that's one. And then another more, longer, just sort of Emmett poem is one that I was inspired from an image where actually it was about the challenges of life and finding self and feeling good about yourself and loving yourself and having strength to do things like this show, for example. Getting through, dare I say it, COVID and this pandemic that's been challenging for all of us. And I was inspired by an image where it was many years ago where my mother came with us on a trip to India to visit family, and she is walked through a doorway, an outer gate doorway, into a courtyard in also in Jaipur, actually, in Rajasthan. And she has, by her hand, holding hands with my daughter, her granddaughter, who's very little. And it's very clearly a next generation thing, and it's very clearly that they're interested in where they're coming into and what they're seeing, but also the whole metaphor of doorways and stuff like that. So that is called Love Opens Doors, and it is a part of you, whole of the other. We flow together. Bodies that begin and end at the beginning. Here where all the same thought, deeply set, the deep insect, our cells hearing quiet, self-sound worth sharing. We ignore it, fear of failing. So one of the things I wanted to share with you all was that the way I've put together the photographs and have them displayed and created in a way that can have them used, seen, hung, shared for 100 years. And I wanted something that would look good and last a long time. And with photography, that's hard because the glass or the plastic that people use in the framing creates a lot of reflection, and the paper can deteriorate over time. So I took the last many years evolving this process where all of my images that are printed and framed and for sale and available for people here to have are archival ink on archival paper on a what's called a gator board. It's its own product. It's foam core board, but it's different because it has a micro wooden fiber, a microfiber veneer of wood that then the image, the printed image is put onto. And then in addition to that, I have asked for, with the printer, and paid for an additional process, which is a UV laminate film, which covers the image. And I don't matte them, and I do full bleed or print them all the way to the full size of what the frame is, using a floater frame. And then the photograph is rigid on this gator board, protected from sunlight and other kinds of dusts and other things, fingerprints. You can touch it, and then if it gets smudged, wipe it off, kind of thing. And then it pops into the frame size that you choose, and literally can last up to 100 years. And part of the reason why I did this is because I didn't want to make a business of all this, because my business is that I've been farming and selling to chefs and restaurants and cafes and some institutions, some larger entities. And I wanted to come up with a way to, like, in the same way that I grow the best produce I can, really quantity over quality, I wanted to come up with the same idea. So if a cafe that I sell to, a restaurant I sell to, wanted to have images of the produce and images of farming and images of the people involved with farming and agriculture, and they want to share them and put them in their restaurant, they'd end up getting greasy. No matter what, they'd get a layer of film and grease. So I wanted to come up with a way that they could do that. And they also don't have the best lighting, because restaurants and cafes aren't really flooded with light, you know? So I wanted to come up with a way where they didn't have to be flooded with light, and the low lights that were around wouldn't reflect off the glass. And every 6 months or so, they could actually take them down and wipe them off with a warm cloth, warm water soapy cloth kind of thing, and clean them and put them back. So I had this idea that I would do maybe this, like, this commercial local agriculture photography available. So when I'm selling them cucumbers and heirloom tomatoes, I can also ask them if they want any, images of that in their restaurant, but in a way that was affordable and would last a long time. And yeah, so that's the specific story about what these pieces of artwork are, and that's where it came from and why I made them the way I did. So there's a few poems, and Spaulding Dunbar Photo Poets Show that's happening here at Canal Street Gallery this month till the beginning of May, and I hope you can come down and enjoy it and be here, and just come and check it out. And yeah, that's about it,
can hang on to it if you think you. Oh, you know what? That's the paper. Hi.
We don't resell, we just represent original artists, so original Well, we represent artists who are basically
No, I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell.
who have a lot of art.
It's all on there. Sorry.
Hi.
Well, we represent artists who are basically
No, I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell.
who have a lot of art.